this morning is our first class on Providence. It's amazing, and it's rightfully so. Uh, I've been doing this for over 40 years teaching, but I haven't taught for about 9 months. So, Jeff, you could probably attest to this, even all this. You're still a little anxious, nervous. Am I going to get up here and forget everything I thought? Am I going to mess up or do this, do that? So it's funny after all these years, 40 years. But what it reminds me of is I can't do this. God has to do this. And so we pray and we trust for his hand to be here and doing this today. Also makes me nervous, the verse that says, I'm more accountable as a teacher in doing this. And so they record these and they do that, and that's nice. But sometimes, especially if I learn something different or said something later on, I go, I wish I wouldn't have said that, and here it's recorded. But so anyway, with all that, the intro this morning, what we're going to start on, if you remember what I've been teaching on for about 5 years now, has been soteriology. Well, I had one last piece, and that was glorification. But Jeff really kind of went over the end times and that pretty well, the new heavens, the new earth. So I thought it'd be a little redundant to go into glorification. So we're going a different direction. We're going to go into Providence. I've taught on Providence. It was probably about 10 years ago or so, I'm guessing, 10, 15 years ago. But it's always a good topic to go back and to talk about. So that's kind of what the plan is at the moment is, and I've got about 8 to 10 weeks that we'll go. Remember, we're not meeting Christmas Day and New Year's Day. So about 8 to 10 weeks. So it's not a lot of time to tackle Providence. So we're not going to hit everything. We're not going to be able to go through all of it in great details, but I'm going to try and hit hopefully what I think at least are the most important parts, and hopefully you'll add to it as we go. But the question with Providence is always the question I is where to start. Where do I start with Providence? And I kind of went and thought over the last several months and really kind of boiled it down. Here's some questions at the top. You have them on your sheet. But how does this world work? Ever stop to think? Sometimes we don't even stop to think about it. But how does this world work? What I mean specifically by that is, what does God do? What is he doing in this world? And what are we doing as man in this world? And what's that relationship? What's going on? And you can see I wrote in there, how you answer that is really one of the most important things that's going to determine how you live, what you do, what you praise, what you thank for, what you ask God to help you with. All those things will be determined on how you view those questions and that answer it. Now, the goal of this class is to go through and find out what the Bible tells us about that. Of course, that's going to be the outline. But I'm starting off with, there's probably more than this, but at least 4 main views or major views that you can have to answer those questions. And let's just look and jump into some of those. Well, and understand this. You all have a theology on this. Every one of us. Even non-Christians have I don't know if you can call it a theology, but at least a working idea of how they answer those questions by the way they live. The way you live determines what you believe. And so what we want to do, hopefully through all this, is find out and make sure that what we do and answer those questions is biblical and right. All right, so number one of the first ways, and most ways, I think a large group of people live their lives as if there's no God. How you live. There's no God. We'll talk about ignore God next. But there's no God. If you go through that, life is just an accident. This describes kind of, and they don't often think about this. Sometimes they have very contradictive beliefs on these things. But this, if you're really going to truly live as if there's no God, life is just an accident or impersonal forces. Man is the focus of everything. You should live only for yourself. Do you understand that? All things work by impersonal forces. No master plan. If If there is no God, think about this. All things are permissible. Why not? If there's no God, what would not be permissible? You ever stop to think about that? If you think about this, and today we debate, we argue, we go back and forth, especially in the political arenas and other places as we live, with the things that are going on right now, such as homosexualism, abortion, transgender, marriage. What's the definition of marriage? The question is, really, if you answer this, that's the battleground, is there a God? That's the answer to all those questions. It really is. That's the debate. Those things aren't the debate. That's not the debate. The debate is there a God? If there's a God, or let's go this other way, if there is no God, then you know what? We're wrong. We're wrong. All those things should be permissible, right? Why shouldn't they be? If we're not accountable to anything, yes. They wouldn't. I know they wouldn't say it. Why? Right. Right. That's what they would say. But they're wrong. Because I would argue back, why? If I came from slime and there's no master plan, I'm not accountable to anybody. When I die, I go back to the ground and there's nothing and it ends. Then I should do whatever I want. And what is right and wrong? What does that even mean if there is no God? That doesn't mean anything. Yes. Right. The reason why we struggle, the reason why men struggle, the reason why atheists struggle with this, Jason, is because they do have the understanding there is a God. It's in them. And they struggle against that. And they struggle because they come up with words like right and wrong, which in theory, what I'm trying to prove is it just proves there's a God. Even people that want to say there is no God act as if there is and want to make statements as if there is. Yes. Right. Right. But even that, let's say there's one world government and there is no God. But there's one world government. And I'm in that government. And they say, this is what you got to do. This is right. This is wrong. I'm going to say, why? I disagree. I disagree. I don't care if the majority says that. I'll stand alone. You're wrong. Because I can do whatever I want. What? See, without God, it makes no sense. There is no such thing as right and wrong. You can't even come into that. That's why if there is no God, debate over abortion, homosexual, transgender, whatever, marrying your cousin, marrying your dog, whatever you want to do, it's a free-for-all. Everything's permissible. Based on what? Oh no, that would be wrong. Why? Stealing, that would be wrong. Why? It's wrong because God put that in your heart. That's what they struggle with. What's wrong, but I guess it doesn't make sense, but it just feels right. Well, yeah, because God put that in you. conscience and those things. He's written it that way. So, but the idea, I'm just trying to get to the absurd. If you really want to say there is no God and live that way, it's a free-for-all. There's nothing. That's the way we should be living. If you have something I want, I should take it. If I'm bigger than you can do it, tough. It's the right thing. Survival of the fittest, right? So, people that want to live that way and say there is no God, they really don't want to live that way because they don't quite understand the full ramifications. But just think, I think Paul said it, right? Is it 1 Corinthians 15? If there is no resurrection, if this life is the only thing, what does it say about Christians? We above all else ought to be most pitied. If there is no God, we messed up. We messed up if there's no God, basically. But the whole point is, through all this, if there is a God, then they've messed up big time. And see, there's the debate of everything in the world right now. All this, anything you want to debate about is there a God and you're accountable or are you not? All right. The next part of this is maybe you don't think there isn't, maybe you think there is a God, or you don't really care one way or the other. You don't say that there isn't, but they just ignore him. I don't acknowledge him. I don't think about him. I don't acknowledge his ways. I just living my human life. Unless something goes really bad, then they may, you ever watch like TV shows, they call him the man upstairs. You know, hey, I know I haven't talked to you a long time, but can you help me do this one thing? And I'll do that. I mean, we'll see that kind of a thing from people like that. But most of their lives, they just ignore God. Nothing to do. What's that called in the Bible? What sin is that, ignoring God? Sometimes we often miss this term. We think it means you're just a bad person, but the term truly means you don't acknowledge his ways, don't acknowledge God. Ungodliness. That's ungodliness. Okay? It's just ignoring him. It's a great sin. People think, well, I don't do anything to God, I just ignored him. That is a great sin. All right, let's read. I've tried to look up a lot of these, so you can at least hear me, we can move. Romans 1:18. Well, we're going to start in verse, I don't want to start in 18, let's start in 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness. There's the term, all ungodliness and unrighteousness. They're two separate things. Of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. They know the truth. It's put in them, but they just ignore it. They suppress it. They don't think about it. That's ungodliness. Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident within them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power, divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. For even though they knew God, here it is, they knew God, they did not honor him as God. They ignored him. They didn't treat him as something to be honored or give thanks. If you don't give thanks to God, that is a very serious thing. But they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible, the form of the corruptible man, and of birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. Therefore, God gave them over to the lust of their hearts, to impurity. All right, here's a big question you always hear. I'd like you to try and answer it. I think you should have an answer from what we just read. If, let's say I want to be an atheist view, or someone wants to argue, if there truly was a God, and he was actually in control of all things, would you expect this world to go or to look like? If there was truly a God who's in control of all things, what would you expect this world to look like? And that's an atheist question I'm asking. You expect to be perfect, right? I should have no sickness and all this. So the question is, they'll retort back, see, there is no God. There's no God in control. Look at this world. Look at what goes on. Look at the suffering, sickness, all this that goes on. Can't tell me there is a God in control of this. What's your answer back as a Christian? All right. And that's right. What's that? All right. So why isn't it now? Sin. There you go. Why is the world, you said it, and I'm just going to push it out even farther. Why is the world looking the way it is right now? It's obviously God's just sitting up in heaven wringing his hands saying, this is not what I wanted, right? This is terrible. Please help me fix it, right? That's what some people believe. Exactly. And you got the purpose down. Now what's this? What's the expectation that God has for man when he put him here? What's the expectation even now? All right. Perfection. Let's go. What did I just read in Romans 1:18? What does he expect from man? To acknowledge him, honor him, and give him thanks. I put myself and my knowledge inside of you and the truth. You are to now acknowledge that truth. You are now to honor me as the God who created all this. I displayed all this for you. Clearly, I'm here. Clearly, I've done all this. You are now to honor me as God and give me thanks. But what does the world do? Man, they suppress it. They put it down. They don't want it. So what is the natural result of that? What would you expect? What does God say is going to happen? He's going to turn you over. He's going to let you own your sin. He's going to let you want to be apart from me? That's what it's going to be. You'll be apart from me. And you'll live. That's why this world is going exactly the way God, who is in control of this world, would have it because of what Romans 1:18 says. He says, you don't want to honor me as God? You don't want to give me thanks? I'll turn you over and watch what the world you'll live in. This is the world we live in. The sin and the consequences of all this. That's why. So when people say they're looking for heaven, and that is coming, and there will be a time of that, and that is there is that desire within them. They know that, and they want that, but they don't want to honor God for that. They want it on their own terms, and that leads to what we have. And heaven will be different. In heaven, there's no more tears, no more pain, no more sickness. So what does that mean you're going to have now? Tears, pain, sickness. Okay? That's because we don't honor him as God and give him thanks. Even though none of us, I hope, would argue that that's the viewpoint we want to take or have in life, you're going to find as we go through each one of these, they've all crept into our Christian lives, okay, in certain forms, in certain different ways for different ones of us also. But do you ever, even though you know better and you know all this as a Christian, do you still live sometimes ignoring God? You go a whole week, 2 weeks, if you don't go to church, And you look back and go, wow, I've never even acknowledged or talked to God in almost a week or two. We do it, don't we? We all fail on that at those times, even though we know better. So that's why we want to hit Providence. Sometimes it's just because our sin, we get caught up in worldliness. Sometimes it's just lack of ignorance, too. If I don't know what God is doing, I also don't see it. If I don't see it, I don't thank him for it. And so hopefully this class will go through and get a better idea of that. Number 2, Daniel 5:23. You can go read it. Well, I got it here. Let me read it. This was Belshazzar. Remember the writing on the wall that happened? And it says, Daniel's interpreting the writing. It says, talking to Belshazzar, but you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his household before you, and you and your nobles, your wives, your two concubines, have been drinking wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver, of gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see, hear, or understand. But, think about that, here's the God in whose hand your life breath, and in whose hands are your life breath, and all your ways. You have not glorified. That's the level of even the non-Christian. He holds their life, breath, and all their ways in his hand. He's doing that all the moment. And if you don't acknowledge that, and if you want to ignore that all your lives, whether you're Belshazzar and you get it caught in this life, or you will be judged in the next, and that. So the Bible is very clear. Ignoring God is not a good thing to do. And that's what people go, well, I didn't commit murder, I didn't steal, I didn't commit adultery, all these things. But did you acknowledge God in all your ways? No, but that's not a big deal. It's the big deal. All right, 2, deism. What's deism? It's the belief in the existence of a supreme being. So they do believe in God. A deist will. Specifically of a creator who does not intervene in the universe. Does not intervene. Created it, but doesn't intervene. The term is used chiefly of an intellectual movement, 17th, 18th centuries, that accepted the existence of a creator on the basis of reason, but rejected belief in a supernatural deity who interacts with humankind. Here's their idea. God is a watchmaker. He made this world, wound it up, set it in motion, put all his natural forces out there in place, and then he just steps back, and now he's just watching. He's observing. Some people can argue, maybe he wants to be entertained. He was bored and he did this to be entertained. Or he's doing this and he wants to be impressed. He's watching to see if he's going to be impressed by anybody. And does not intervene or interact with his creation. You're on your own. Don't ask God to help. Just use what he's provided. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. They may know who are some deists. You probably know some of these gentlemen from our history. But Ben Franklin was a deist. Another major founding father, Thomas Jefferson, was a deist. And you'll see some of the things, if you read, Thomas Jefferson was a deist in that way. So they'll believe in God, but he's just kind of an observer now. Don't bother him. Don't call on him. Don't do anything. He's just observing right now. Yeah, they're not all deists. No, but there are deists in there. So, but no, they are not all deists. And church here, but I'm going to venture to say, and I don't know, I'm not looking at anybody, but we're not all Christians in this church. That doesn't mean we're not a Christian church in that sense either. Okay. The way I see this, again, is anybody in here a deist? Okay. No, didn't see it. All right. But you know what? There are times, sometimes we act as deists. There's a problem. We won't ever admit we are. And I can see this. Have you ever, I've heard people, and I don't think it was in this church, a long time ago. Have you ever heard someone say something like this? I was driving down the road, and all of a sudden, I lost control. It was snowy, it was icy. I lost control of the car. I was going straight for the car. He's coming straight at me. There's no way. This is going to happen. And all of a sudden, we missed. And they go something like this, almost sheepishly, almost, do you think that could have been God that did that? Almost as if he wouldn't intervene in this situation. Would he for someone like me? That sense, or would he? Or have you ever heard someone come along and say, the circumstances of the way this came about, this situation, whatever it is, was so strange. The two of us having this thought and meeting and doing, could this have been God? Do you think? Or probably not, right? But could it have been? It's almost as if, does God really work and act in his creation? And that's this, like this? Those are deistic thoughts in that sense. Here, let me ask one more question. What if on the same road, icy, losing control, coming in, sliding to each other, bam. Was that God too, or not? How you think on those? Say those are things. Is it only God if you miss? And it's not God if you hit, right? Those are deistic thoughts. Okay? In that sense. Okay. Right. I asked if any of you were deists. You said no. But even I probably have said something like that in my life. I'll admit it. I've done that, especially in my younger life, as I didn't fully understand a lot of these things. So these things can, again, even though we aren't this, they can creep in to our Christian life, and then it changes and affects us how we live and how we praise God. Yes. That's going to be the bottom line. That's what we're going to try and continue to work. We're going to work through scriptures. We're going to work through questions on this and all this. But that's where we want to head to with all this. What about the next one? Dualism. This is an important one. I hear this a lot from Christians who creep in, even though they wouldn't call themselves a dualist. Dualism is the belief in two supreme opposed powers or gods. There's two opposing powers, or sets of divine dynamic beings that cause the world to exist. Principally good versus evil. The hope is one day good will triumph over evil. God versus Satan is what's going on right now. It's a battle. It's going on right now between the two of them. With the eventual victory of God over Satan, we know that. But in the meantime, Satan has smaller victories right now. He gets some things in and gets over on this. But ultimately, God will triumph. And we just hope right now and pray that God can come in and clean up the mess that Satan did, kind of make it at least somewhat palatable or better in some way for us. But that doggone Satan is just messing things up here for God, and he's working through it, doing his best, but Satan kind of gets things over on him. Then here's the last. The people that are dualism kind of believe this: all good things that happen are from God. The car missed. All bad things are from Satan. Boom, it hit. Well, Satan got this one over on God, but I'll pray to God and hopefully he'll clean it up. I've seen. There's a story, but someone's in a car accident and they're hurt in their hospital, and there's a pastor there rushing him in, and the idea is, now remember, God had nothing to do with this. God had nothing to do with this. Don't blame him. And that's the way to live your life. Bad things happen by Satan. Good things happen by God. Back and forth. Keep going. And hopefully one day, God will finally get him over and get him in his place. But right now, it's just, he's really kind of messing some things up. And there is good versus evil. Don't misunderstand me. There's good versus evil in this world. But the issue is God on the side of good, who's trying to fight this deity on the other side of evil? Okay? And this kind of battle's going on right now. And eventually, you lost that battle, won this one, lost that battle, won this one. But ultimately, God's going to do it. That's what's not going on. That's what's not going on. We'll look at this. I mean, if you want to believe that, but hopefully we'll convince you if you do, otherwise as we go through that, if that is what you think or believe right now. Here's a good question. Does it creep into Christians thinking too? Let me ask you this. Was it God or Satan? Let me answer this for me. By natural causes, that's even kind of your eyebrows should kind of like that one. By natural causes, every bar in the whole city and strip club burnt down overnight. All happened at once. Would you say that would we attribute that to God or Satan? In a sense, we'd probably say, wow, look what God has done. Great. But what happened the same next night, but not by arson, every church in the city burnt down? Would we say, obviously Satan did this, right? He did this. He's doing this, and we better help God now get back at Satan and help him get a victory, because Satan just got a victory, right? If you think that way, you've got dualism in your thinking, okay? And we'll hope we'll work through that. That's not. What about the Twin Towers? Let's go through that. They got destroyed. God or Satan? A child is killed. I was in a youth group way back when. How many years ago was that? 50 years ago. And it came up, the youth leaders, it was my girlfriend's church. It was a Lutheran church. I'm not saying against Lutheran, but it wasn't the church I attended. And the youth, and they had us throw questions in the middle in a group, and We had a student in Lucas at that time that got run over by a bus and was killed. Not a school bus, but a different bus. And the question was, where was God when that happened? What? He didn't. The answer was this: he didn't want that to happen. But sometimes things just do, apart from God in that sense. And he's going to come in now and try and get comfort to the family, and he'll do what he can now to try and help that out, the situation out after that. That's what we were told in that group. And that's dualism thinking, okay? That somehow God had nothing to do with that and was not part of that. We want to look and see, is that biblical or is it not biblical? Yeah. Right. I agree. And that's why we study the Word. Because guess what? What seems right to us has no bearing on anything being right. Okay? Has no bearing. Only the Word can instruct us of what God is doing and who He is and how He acts. Only God can tell us that. We cannot. You know what we do? Almost inevitably. You try and reason who God is. Who do you end up with? Yourself. You end up with another human. He's like me. Okay? And God says, I'm not like you. Okay. Let's just do one more. All of your family dies at once. Strange circumstances. Okay, they die all at once. You get cancer the next day. You lose your job. You lose your house. You're financially ruined. God or Satan did that. God or Satan. People argue. Of course, the answer, remember, in church is always God or Jesus. But think about that for a minute. There are many people who would say that was, Satan is doing this. He's getting this. Now, did that situation happen in the Bible? It did. Job. Okay. Was it Satan that did it? Yeah. Satan did it. But what did Job say? Naked I've come into this world, naked I'll return. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. I can't stand the Lord. Is that what he said? Blessed be the name of the Lord. All that just happened to him. And he did not sin with his mouth. Now, wait, Job. God didn't say, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was Satan. We got this thing going on, and he did it. I didn't do it. Okay? That's not what God said. With his mouth, he did not sin. With his words, he said the truth. It was right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Satan did it, and God did it. It's always, but understand this, and we're going to find. So what's that relationship? What's the relationship? That's what we're going to find out. Is it two dueling deities back and forth, or is there one in control? And one you can always say, God did this. I don't care if Satan was involved. I don't care if my neighbor with his own filthy heart did it on his own, apart from Satan. God's hand was there. He has to ask permission. Another God doesn't ask another God for permission, do they? Yeah. These are where we're heading through all this. But there is so much of those thoughts, and sometimes they creep into our minds, is that somehow Satan, and I turn on the TV and watch Christian TV, rebuke Satan, get him out of here. He's doing this, he's doing that, get him out. Okay, well, Jeff taught us in Jude, even Michael doesn't say a reviling word against Satan.
Isn't it? I don't know the exact word, archetype. Megan and I were trying to figure it out. But Satan, God
They're two created beings. They're two created beings. That's a whole different animal than a God. Do you understand? God and Satan are not anywhere close to being equal. God goes like this, and Satan flies to the outest end of the galaxies. He can disintegrate. God can't just like that. He holds the existence of Satan in his hand. All he's got to do is let go. He doesn't exist. That's God. That's the difference between God and Satan. But you're right. You're good. That's good. Michael and Satan are the two that are opposing at time. God is God. Yep. Right. What's the big question we always usually want to try and answer that most of the time you won't get an answer to. You might sometimes, but most of the time you don't. W-H-Y. Why? Why? Job questioned that, remember? He went through that. He questioned it. He didn't sin with his words beginning, but he did sin as he questioned God and wanted an answer. God, I don't know. I don't understand what's going on. I question you. Give me an answer. What's going on? And remember, what did Job do at the end? I repent of my words. You know what? I will shut my mouth. Job says. You know what? I'm looking back. Remember, when did he say that? After God answered him. He kept asking God. Finally, God stepped in, and God said, "Job, I'm so sorry. Here's what's going on in heaven, and I'm doing this. I hope it's okay with you, and I want you to be good with this. Okay? Is that?" God just came in and said, he said, "Job, where were you? Were you the one? You the one that holds up the earth? Are you the one that has that sustains the world?" And he went through all these chapters of who he is. He didn't answer Job's question. Why? Didn't answer it at all. But Job just said, "You know what? I'm going to shut my mouth and I repent. I'm wrong. You're God. I'm not." And that was the answer. And that's what we got to do a lot of times, Tom, is this. When we have why, what's going on, we need to shut our mouths and say, "You're God. I'm not. Blessed be the name of the Lord." And what do I know about God? He is good and loving. So everything he does works to my good. Do you believe it or do you don't? That's the question. Do you believe it or don't you? That's really what it comes down to. Well, I want to, but you better clean this up for me or I'm not going to. Well, then you don't believe it. That's the answer. You don't believe it then. Okay. Remember Habakkuk? He argued, he wanted an answer. God, I'm living amongst these Jews and they're so wicked. And why are you just letting them go on and prosper? What was, and I want an answer. I'm going to say, do I get an answer? And what was God's answer? He didn't say, "Yeah, you're right, Habakkuk. They are wicked. So I'm going to bring down the Chaldeans, have them, teach them a lesson and punish them, bring out my wrath upon them." What was, like, whoa. The Chaldeans are worse than the Jews. What are you doing? And all this. And finally, what does Job answer at the end? Or Habakkuk answers at the end? You know what? Though, I'm going to paraphrase, though there's no food, though there's suffering, no matter what I go through with this, whatever it is, I will praise you. There was no answer. Nothing changed. He just learned to have faith and trust in God. And no matter what the providence of God brings, no matter what it brings, do you trust that God is good? God has a plan? Or is he just watchmaker sitting up there and has no control? Or is he fighting against Satan, and Satan got one in here. See, all this changes how you act, think, pray, trust, praise, thanks God. God, it all changes on how you view and what your theology is. Well, we should end there. Number 4 is my favorite. Number 4 was me at times. My early life, I would say that I saw God as a CEO. This is one I made up. I don't know if there's a good term for it. Jeff, you may know it, but I don't. So I don't think there is a term. I just made it up. That you think God is a CEO. And just to give you a real quick to end on this is, who is Brandon, my son-in-law, in here? No. Who works at a large company? Anybody work at a large company? Okay. You don't quite have the same job I do, but I deal with paper clips at times. If you were out of paper clips in your truck, you need it, would you go to the head of your company and say, hey, I'm out of paper clips. Can you deal with that for me? No, why? He'd tell you to get out of here, go get your own. I got more important things to do. I'm busy. That stuff, you can deal with that stuff. Leave me alone. That's a big way, a lot of times as we as Christians view God, is he's a big God. He's got a lot of important things going on. 7 billion people he's dealing with. Here's what I used to do. Remember I told you the story with my mom. And I'd lose my keys. And my mom would say, let's stop and pray. See, the Lord help us find your keys. I'm thinking, didn't do that. I just said, that's what I did on the inside. But I'd say, God is not worried about me finding my keys right now. You don't pray to God for that kind of stuff, okay? Because that's here. That's stuff we deal with. Once you get up to about here, there's a line. Once you get to that line, okay, if you get cancer, you got a sick child, you've got, a divorce is pending or looming. Now you've hit that line. Then now you take that stuff to the Lord. You deal with this stuff down here. He doesn't have time with that. Don't bother him. See, that's God as the CEO. And what is that? I'm going too long. But that's making God like us. And he's not like us. He is infinite. 7 billion people can talk to him at once, and he understands every one of them. Isn't that amazing? Ever think about that? So God, and we'll talk more about that and go over that one next week. I didn't quite get as far as I thought, but that's typical. So, all right. So let me close. Prayer. Lord, we thank you that you are a God and you have a word that teaches us what you are like. We cannot fully know you and your ways. We can't understand them all. But what you have shared, we are to know. We are to try, to believe, to know that. And then we're also to trust in the areas that we don't know and give you the praise, knowing that you are a good God who is all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipresent, and is good and holy and righteous, and is accomplishing your plan and will. Lord, may we live that each and every day. Pray this in your Son's name. Amen.